Brookline, Massachusetts. Summer 1900. The sun was already high when young James Walker crouched beside the ninth hole at the country club. He wasn't there to play. He never was. His job was to carry the clubs and stay quiet. He was just a caddie. But behind those curious brown eyes, a storm was brewing. He watched every swing, every stance, every whispered decision between club and wind. He listened. He studied. And most of all, he dreamed. That morning, a wealthy man in a tan suit sliced the ball deep into the woods. While the man cursed under his breath and James went searching, he spotted something else. Something glinting beneath the leaves. It was an old golf ball, with faded lettering. W. Hartley. He turned it in his hand, puzzled. Who was Hartley? That night, James sat at the dinner table, quiet, while his father, Robert Walker, slammed down the newspaper. "You bring home money?" he asked. James nodded. $3 today, his father grunted. "That's real work. Carrying sticks for rich men. Not swinging them like some fool." James didn't reply. But when his father turned away, he slipped the golf ball into his pocket and clenched it tight. Later that night, James couldn't sleep. He lay awake in the small bedroom he shared with his younger brother. Outside, the summer wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, the hoot of a late train echoed. He pulled out the old golf ball, stared at the name again. W. Hartley. Suddenly, a thought struck him, and he snuck out. In the moonlight, barefoot, he crept through the backyard. He planted a coffee can in the dirt, held a broomstick like a club, and swung. The ball missed. He tried again. Missed. One more. Click. The sound was pure magic. The ball soared and fell right into the can. He gasped. Behind him, a light flicked on. His mother, Helen, leaned out the back door. "James! You'll wake your brother. Come inside." He nodded, heart still racing, and slipped the ball back into his pocket. That night, he didn't just dream of playing golf. He knew it. He had found his spark. A week later, James was walking home from the club, still holding the old Hartley ball in his hand, when he passed a tiny shop tucked between a barber and a bakery. A wooden sign above the dusty window read, "Crafted Clubs and Company." Inside, on the far wall, hung a black and white photograph. James stepped closer, squinting through the glass. It was a man in a flat cap, holding a trophy. "William Hartley," it said. "The greatest golfer of our time." James's eyes widened. It wasn't just a name. It was a legend. And the ball in his hand had belonged to him. He ran home, heart pounding. But halfway there, he stopped. Across the street, beneath a sycamore tree, a girl stood reading a book. Her eyes were the deepest shade of green he had ever seen. She glanced up, caught him staring, smiled. James flushed and looked away. But that smile, it followed him all the way home. At the Walker house, the dinner table was quiet as usual. His mother served stew. His younger brother slurped loudly. And his father stared at James. "You've been dreaming again, haven't you?" James paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. "I saw a picture of William Hartley today," he said. "He played the game like nobody else. His father slammed his fist on the table. "You're not Hartley. You're my son. You bring home money, not daydreams." His mother reached across and gently touched Robert's arm. But James's eyes didn't leave his father's. "I want to play," he whispered. The silence that followed was colder than the wind outside. Later that night, a knock at the back door. It was the owner of the golf shop. The man with the photograph. He said nothing. Just reached into his bag and handed James a small golf club, handcrafted, fitted perfectly to his height. Then he turned and walked away. James stood there, stunned. His fingers closed around the grip. It felt like it had been waiting for him. That night, under the moonlight, he set the coffee can out again. Took the new club in hand. Tap. The sound echoed like thunder in his heart. 2 weeks later, a large crowd had gathered at the Brookline City Hall. Banners hung from windows. A brass band tuned its instruments. The legendary William Hartley was in town. 3-time British Open champion. US Open winner. The name on that golf ball. James stood at the gate, eyes wide. He had skipped school. He didn't care. He couldn't miss this. But the gates were closed. Only ticket holders were allowed inside. He watched from a distance. Until... "Go," his mother whispered, appearing suddenly at his side. Her hand pressed a paper ticket into his palm. "I'll find you after." James blinked. "How did you?" "Run." He did. Inside the hall, Hartley stepped onto the stage. He didn't look like a king. Just a man in a worn coat with sharp eyes and a quiet strength. He didn't boast. He taught. He showed the audience how to hold a club. How to breathe. How to think. Then he asked the question. "Who wants to try?" Hands shot up. But Hartley pointed to the back. "You." "The boy in the cap." James froze. Was he pointing at? Yes. He stepped forward slowly, legs trembling. Hartley handed him a club. Whispered, "Grip it like this." James nodded. The crowd fell silent. He swung once. Missed. Murmurs. Again. He hit the ball dead center. It sailed clean through the target hoop. The room erupted. Hartley raised his eyebrows, impressed. Then he leaned down and said something no one else heard. "You've got it, kid. Don't waste it." James didn't breathe for 10 seconds. He'd just been seen by a legend. That night, he trained harder than ever. His father watched from the window. Didn't say a word. But James didn't care. He had fire in his veins now. The kind that didn't go out. One rainy afternoon, James burst into the house, soaked and breathless. He held the flyer in his hand. "Amateur Golf Championship, Brookline, next month." He slapped it on the kitchen table where his father sat reading. "I want to enter." Robert Walker didn't even look up. "Cost?" $50. The room went silent. His mother froze by the stove. His younger brother stopped chewing. Robert slowly folded the paper. Looked his son in the eye. $50 to chase a dream? James nodded. "I'll work extra shifts. I'll pay it back. Every cent." Robert stood. "You want to play with rich men? Wear fine clothes and wave to crowds?" "No," James said firm. "I want to play because I'm good. Because I love it. Because it's all I think about." Robert stepped closer. "You think love keeps this house warm? You think passion puts food on the table?" James didn't flinch. "No. But maybe, just maybe, it can change everything." That night, long after the dishes were done and the fire was low, Robert knocked gently on James's door. He sat at the edge of the bed. "I'll give you the 50. James turned, stunned. But if you lose," Robert interrupted. "You walk away. No more clubs. No more games. You get a real job and be a man." James swallowed hard. "And if I win?" Robert's voice softened. "Then you go all the way. And I'll stand behind you." They shook hands. No more words were needed. The deal was made. The evening before the championship reception, James stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of a borrowed shirt. His shoes were scuffed. His jacket too big. But this was the best he had. He took a breath. Tonight he would step into a room full of people who didn't think he belonged. He was just a kid from the wrong side of Brookline. But he was going anyway. The ballroom glowed with golden chandeliers and polished marble floors. Laughter echoed. Crystal glasses clinked. James entered slowly, eyes scanning the crowd. And then he saw her. Claire. The girl with the green eyes. She was dancing, or rather, trying not to. An older man in a navy blazer tugged her by the wrist, talking too close, smiling too wide. She looked uncomfortable. James didn't think. He walked straight toward them. "Excuse me," he said firmly. "She's due for a dance with me." Claire looked at him, surprised, then smiled. "Actually, yes. I am." She took his hand and stepped away from the man without another word. They danced slowly. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then she whispered, "You don't look like them." He laughed nervously. "I'm not. I don't belong here." She studied him for a moment. "Then why did you come?" James looked around. "At first I thought maybe to prove I could. But now—" He met her eyes. "Now I think it was to meet you." Claire's cheeks flushed. But she didn't look away. Later on the balcony, away from the crowd, they talked. About books, music, dreams. And when James mentioned golf, Claire's eyes lit up. "My father and brother play," she said. "I've always loved watching." James looked down. "I've seen them at the club." She tilted her head. "You've seen me too." He smiled. "I remember." They sat in silence, the sound of distant music drifting through the open doors. And for the first time in a long time, James didn't feel like he had to fight. He just was. But deep inside, something stirred. The old voice. His father's voice. "You don't belong here." And as the night wore on, James couldn't help but wonder. Was this real? Or just a moment before the storm? 1 week before the championship. James stood at the gate of the country club, holding his application form. The sun was out. The grass was perfect. And the tension? Thick as smoke. A man in a dark vest, the club secretary, looked him up and down. "You're applying as a player?" "Yes," James said. "Amateur." The man smirked. "You've worked here as a caddie for 10 years. James nodded. "I have. And now you want to play against the gentleman you used to carry bags for?" A pause. "Yes." The secretary leaned in. "Do you even have a sponsor?" James hesitated. "Not yet." Behind him, voices. The board. Whispers. Laughter. "He'll make a mockery of the game. He doesn't have a club membership. No pedigree. Barely proper shoes." James gripped the form tighter. And then, a voice from the hallway. "I'll sponsor him." Everyone turned. It was Mr. Adams, the club's caddy master. A man who had quietly watched James grow from a boy with a stick to a contender. "I'm a dues-paying member," Adams added. "And I believe in talent." The room fell silent. The board exchanged looks. Finally, the secretary cleared his throat. "There's still a $50 registration fee." James nodded. "I have it." He handed over a folded envelope. Every dollar he had. And more than that. Every dream. That night, James sat at the kitchen table, silent. His mother watched him from the stove. "You paid?" He nodded. She smiled, then placed a fresh cup of tea beside him. His father walked in. Paused. Didn't say a word. Just placed a single dollar bill beside James's hand. A gesture of respect and quiet support. The field was set. The stage was real. James Walker was officially a contender in the 1913 United States Open Championship. The morning air was sharp. Mist curled over the green like breath from a giant's lungs. Spectators lined the ropes, holding their hats, clutching programs. Cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled. It was day 1 of the 1913 U.S. Open. And James Walker stood at the first tee. Alone. No entourage. No monogrammed bags. No family crest. Just a borrowed cap. A second-hand sweater. And a name no one knew. Yet. He looked to his left. William Hartley, now in his 40s but still graceful as ever, stood tall with a polished club in hand. To his right, Tom Reed, Hartley's protege, young, cold-eyed, and smooth as granite. Both men wore expressions carved from stone. James's fingers trembled around the grip. His caddie, a boy no older than 12, handed him a club. "Driver," the boy whispered. James nodded. Swallowed. The crowd hushed. He looked down the fairway. Then, he swung. The sound rang out. Crack. Like a firecracker against the fog. The ball soared. Straight. Clean. True. The crowd erupted in polite applause. Hartley raised his brow. Reed didn't blink. James exhaled. First shot down. 17 more to go. But the next few holes? Rough. A slice into the sand on 3. A misjudged chip on 6. A 3-putt on 8. By the turn, he was 4 over par. The whispers started. Too green. Too nervous. Back to caddying by tomorrow. James's jaw clenched. He tried to focus. Tried to breathe. Tried to remember Hartley's words. Grip it like this. But the pressure. The silence. The weight of 1,000 invisible eyes. It was suffocating. Then came the 10th hole. Par 4. Dogleg right. Wind against him. James stepped up. Closed his eyes. Thought of home. Of Claire's smile. Of his mother's tea. And swung. Crack. The ball curved beautifully. Landed 10 feet from the pin. Gasps. Applause. Even Hartley nodded. James allowed himself the smallest smile. One good shot. One hole at a time. As the round ended, he wasn't leading. Not yet. But he wasn't at the bottom either. And that was enough. The first day belonged to nerves. Tomorrow, he would come for the game. Day 2. James stood in front of the mirror in the locker room. His hands shook. His collar clung to the back of his neck, soaked with sweat before the round even began. This was it. Make the cut. Or go home. Outside, the wind howled. Harder than yesterday. Harsher. Unforgiving. The scoreboard loomed near the clubhouse. Hartley, even par. Reed, 1 under. Walker, +4. The line was +5. One more mistake, and he was out. First hole. Bogey. Second hole. Par. Third. Par. Then the fourth. A water hazard. A penalty stroke. Now he was +6. The cut line swallowed his name. On the 7th hole, he stared at the green, his club trembling. He could see them. The men in vests. The club board members. Smiling. Not because they wanted him to win. Because they were certain he'd fail. And behind the crowd, on the hill, someone else stood. His father. Robert Walker. Arms folded. Expression unreadable. James looked away. Took a breath. He had 2 choices. Fold. Or fight. He stepped up. Adjusted his grip. And hit the shot of his life. The ball flew over the bunker, kissed the slope, and rolled down within 2 feet of the pin. Gasps. Applause. Birdie. On the next hole, par. Then birdie again. Then par. 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 He clawed his way back. And by the time he reached the 18th, he was right on the line. One shot. If he missed, it was over. The crowd fell silent. The green was slick. Downhill. Left break. James knelt. Read the grass. Visualize the curve. His caddy whispered, "You've done this 1,000 times." James stood. Tapped the ball. It rolled. Slowed. Paused. And dropped. The crowd exploded. He made the cut. As James walked off the green, people rushed him. But he looked only to the top of the hill, where his father stood, still as a statue. Their eyes met. No smile. No nod. But something was different. Respect. James exhaled. He wasn't done yet. The sky was heavy that morning. No wind. No birds. Just a restless stillness over the course. It was the rest day before the final round. James sat on a bench near the 9th green, staring at the fairway. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. The past 2 days had taken everything from him. But tomorrow would take more. "Mind if I sit?" He turned. It was Claire. Hair tied back. Book in hand. She smiled. James nodded. They sat in silence. For once, the quiet wasn't awkward. Claire looked at him. "You're shaking." He chuckled softly. "I don't know if I can win." She tilted her head. "You don't have to. You just have to belong out there." James stared forward. "I'm not one of them, Claire. I never will be. I'm not rich. I'm not from a family. I'm just a kid with a borrowed sweater and a caddy who still counts on his fingers." Claire reached over. Took his hand. "Maybe that's why people are cheering louder for you than for anyone else." James turned to her. "What if I lose?" She smiled gently. "Then you lose with more grace than any of them will ever win." That afternoon, as James was cleaning his clubs behind the clubhouse, 2 men approached. Tom Reed and one of the British sponsors, a tall man in a bowler hat. Reed lit a cigarette. Stared for a moment. "You've done well," he said. James didn't respond. Then the sponsor spoke. "We represent gentlemen who would prefer not to see tomorrow become complicated." James froze. "What do you mean?" The man smiled. "You've made a good impression. There's a future for you. Opportunities. If you were to withdraw." James's eyes narrowed. "You're asking me to quit? We're giving you a door. The kind you don't often get. You step away now, gracefully, and we'll open every one of them for you. Tomorrow's match never happens. But your future? It becomes very comfortable." James looked down at his hands. Rough. Worn. The kind of hands doors never open for. He looked back up. "No." Reed stepped forward. "You think they'll let someone like you win?" James shrugged. "I don't care. I'm not playing to be liked. I'm playing to win." That night, James returned home. His father was in the garage, fixing a broken chair. James stood in the doorway. "They offered me a way out," he said quietly. I said no. Robert didn't look up. I would have said the same. Their eyes met. And in that silence, they understood each other. At last. The final day dawned heavy with fog. By 9 a.m., the mist began to lift, revealing the course like a battlefield waiting for its war. 3 names. 3 scores tied. 3 men standing between history and obscurity. William Hartley. The legend. Tom Reed. The prodigy. James Walker. The outsider. James arrived early. His caddy, little Eddie, was already waiting, pacing in a too-big sweater, clutching a cloth to wipe the clubs. "You ready?" Eddie asked, eyes wide. James knelt, looked him straight in the eye. "Only if you are." They fist-bumped. The first hole. Hartley, par. Reed, par. James, par. So it began. Hole after hole, swing after swing, the tension climbed. By the 9th, Reed surged ahead by 1 stroke. At the 11th, Hartley tied him. James? Still behind. But quiet. Focused. Each step heavier than the last. Each breath tighter in his chest. And yet, Eddie kept whispering encouragement. You've done harder. Just play like we practiced. Eyes on the pin. By the 14th hole, James made birdie. And the game was even again. Then the 16th. Reed hit long. Overshot the green. Bogey. James nailed it to within a yard. The crowd gasped. For the first time. He led. On the 17th, Hartley stepped aside and motioned James to tee first. You've earned it, he said quietly. James hesitated. Then nodded. Swung. Par. Hartley? Par. Reed? Scrambled, bogey again. And just like that. The 18th hole. It would all come down to this. The world seemed to stop. Cameras lined the ropes. Spectators held their breath. Some couldn't even watch. James approached his ball. The green stretched out like a painting, framed by history. He looked around. Saw his father, Robert, standing in the back. Their eyes locked. Robert gave a slow nod. Then Claire, just behind the gallery ropes. She mouthed one word. Go. James stepped up. Eddie handed him the final club. Sink it, he whispered. James smiled. Then swung. The ball rolled. Slower. Slower. And dropped. Dead center. The crowd erupted. Cheers. Shouts. Tears. James Walker, the poor caddie from Brookline, had just defeated 2 of the world's finest. He stood in the sunlight, stunned, surrounded by strangers chanting his name. Eddie threw his hands in the air and jumped onto James's back. They laughed. Cried. Held on tight. Later, as the trophy was presented, Hartley walked over. He shook James's hand. You didn't just win, he said. You changed the game. The day after the win, James didn't wake up in the mansion. He didn't get a parade. No one handed him a blank check. But when he walked down the street, people nodded. Grocery clerks smiled. Strangers clapped him on the back. Because they knew what he did. And what it meant. He and Eddie stood on the 9th green together, the sun warming their faces. Eddie looked up. Do we have to give the trophy back now? James laughed. No, Eddie. That one's ours. They sat on the grass. Not champions. Just 2 boys who never gave up. Later that week, a telegram arrived. From William Hartley. You played like a gentleman. When you're in London, we'll play again. No press. Just golf. James smiled as he folded the message. His father, Robert, never said, I'm proud of you. Not with words. But one night, James came home late from training and found his old broomstick club, the one from childhood, polished and mounted above the fireplace. No note. No explanation. Just legacy. Claire? She stayed. Not because James won, but because she always believed he could. They sat in the same park where they first really talked, the same worn bench, hands still entwined. What now? She asked. James looked ahead. I don't know. But whatever it is, he looked at her. I'm not doing it alone. Years passed. James Walker never became the richest man in America. But he became something rarer. A man who proved that character beats class. That work beats wealth. And that talent? It lives everywhere, even in borrowed shoes. Eddie grew up. Started his own sporting goods store. He hung a photo of that final putt behind the counter. And when people asked, Is that really you on his shoulders? He grinned. Darn right it is. And James? He played again. And again. And when he finally left the course for good, it wasn't because the world told him to. It was because he had nothing left to prove. He already won.
If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Thank you for watching.